Your prices and fees send a signal. They communicate something about your practice, and it's a very quick way for people to understand you without going into all of the details of why that's so. So it's actually my birthday today, and in the back here, I received a bottle of champagne, and it's quite expensive. Compare that with a champagne that is very cheap. And you might not know all of the details. You might not know where the grapes are from. You might not know how old it is or any of the small details. But when you go to the shop and look at the price tag, let's say there's a champagne that is $15 or a sparkling wine that's $15. And next to it is another wine that is $150, so 10 times the price. Just from the price itself sends a message about what kind of product this is. And in your case, it would be a service. And so if our messaging is out of alignment, if we claim that we're premium, if we claim that we're the best, if we claim that we're the most modern, and our prices don't reflect that, let's say our prices are competing to be one of the cheapest ones, then what happens is we're trying to send a message saying that we're X or whatever, and our price is also sending a message. And if that conflicts, what we have is confusion. And confusion and doubt creates fear from moving forward, which is what we want to avoid. So pricing and fees, and I'm not saying that you should necessarily be displaying them on your website, which is the industry norm to not do. But for some practices, it might actually make sense to display prices and fees on their website because the transparency also sends a signal about what kind of practice this is. The actual price itself sends a message, and the narrative that you've painted from your website, from the exterior office architecture that they see when they find you on Google Business, or when they actually come into the office and see how clean your reception desk is or how well maintained the waiting room is, and so on and so forth. All these points that paint a narrative, and then they come to your price. One of the reasons that case acceptance can become difficult is if your price tells a completely different story. If you've been painting yourself a certain way and then the price comes out, people might ask themselves, why is it so cheap? What is wrong with it? Which is the issue that Spirit Airlines had. And vice versa, if you painted a narrative that you're the affordable, cost-effective practice and suddenly there's this bill that seems out of alignment with it. So we have to be very attentive with also how we frame the pricing as well. Now, we can go deeper. There's also elements of insurance. Insurance participation is also a signal. It communicates something about the practice, about the services that you provide, about the quality of the materials and everything beyond just the insurance participation. So the question isn't to ask whether you should be part of this insurance or not and what the numbers could look like, but it's to ask yourself, for the ideal patient, is insurance participation going to validate or conflict with the narrative that we have to paint for them? And this also goes into financing, that it seems obvious. Why wouldn't we want to provide financing for everyone? And financing just seems like a way to make things easier to pay. But you have to understand that for some people, financing is almost like it's a bit of a shameful thing to do. Some people like the fact that they're able to purchase something outright that is only able to be purchased outright, that there is no financing option for. That is a status symbol for them. And so if you're offering financing, then the person who sought to gain the status by being the person who could buy it without financing loses that ability to, now people don't know if they financed it or not. Now, these are very nuanced points, but the overarching idea is that you have to understand that the dynamics of how you price and the logistics around it and the context of how you frame that price matters an incredible amount to the overall story that you're telling about your practice. And people choose stories. We don't choose based on all the details. We can do all the research we want to, but at some point there's some information we can't receive, or we can't become an expert at everything. So what we do is we end up telling ourselves things based on the limited amount of information that we gather. And price, like with the sparkling wine, is a big indicator of what we'll tell ourselves. If I see a cheap wine, there's not much of a story I can tell myself besides this is just a cheap wine that is going to have some alcohol in it. If it's a very expensive wine, now the ability for me to tell myself a story of why I'm the type of person to purchase this becomes much stronger. I'm able to tell myself that it's because I respect vintage, or I enjoy the craftsmanship, or this is exotic, or not everyone else can have this. Whatever it is, the story becomes more open to interpretation the more you actually raise your price. I'm not saying you have to go like north all the time, but it definitely shouldn't be at the rock bottom either, right? So our goal as practices is to tell a story, or to create a narrative that will help the patient move forward to getting the treatment that they need. And the way to do that is by intentionally curating and designing every aspect of your practice that has the potential to tell a story about what kind of practice you are, so that the right fits can find you. And price is one of the biggest ones. All right, that's it for today's video. Hope you found it helpful, and see you guys in the next one.